Okay, good. So I'll try to summarize uh, everything that was said and somehow in a more, to try to put everything together to give the whole picture together. Again, just a word about myself. I'm a professor at the Hebrew University of Linguistics. This year I'm a visiting professor here at Yale. And I'm also activist. I will tell you a few things that I did in the past and in what way I'm involved in this and in other fights for I don't want to say democracy, for liberalism in Israel. I think that's because part of the issue here is what is democracy. So I will try to do it very quick, very brief, and in a systematic way, basically dividing to try to understand what is happening now. And I think in a way, Naftali explained what is happening in more details, and Yair tried to give the ideology, and I kind of want to bring those things together in in a sense of how everything is connected now. And then to move to basically what we're afraid of, like why this is really becoming real and concrete, and basically to summarize the details that Naftali mentioned before, and also why I think the exhibition of it were when Michal presented the life that we're living in. But on the other hand, I think there is some hope, or at least there is much discussion now about what is the future that we would like to see and what we're aiming to. And I think this is part of what is happening now, that new coalitions are actually built now in Israel, and people have the courage to actually come back and dream about our future, even if it's part of our battle. So when we say what is happening, I think basically there is a very simple answer that what's happening now in Israel is part of what we see all over the world of populist government, of populism. And it actually has all the characters of populism that you saw here with Trump, people see in Hungary, in other countries. It's actually quite amazing how there's like a recipe to a populist government, and it's just happening exactly following line by line of the recipe of what populist movement does. Basically, and this is, I think, summarized a lot of what Yair just spoke about, there is this notion of the people. And in order to be the people, you need the other, and this is the others are clearly, in Israel, there is a clear other, which is the Arabs, and racism and laws of racism, that we'll talk about them in a few seconds. And there's also talk about migrants as the enemy. When there was a year ago, when there was a situation in Ukraine, the only country that blocked, gave very little numbers of refugees to allow to come to Israel, to its area was Israel. And now we hear more and more talks about the Russian immigrants, that we want only the real Jews, not the ones that are just descended, not the ones that are not feeling that their parents are not Jews. So this is something that actually the current government wants to change. Who can come back? Who can immigrate to Israel? And always this notion comes law and order, that because of the Arabs, there are problems with law and order. We need government. This is how the supremacist party got its power. It got a lot of votes from the south of Israel, where there is tension with Arabs. So this is actually part of the recipe that we see all over. And then there is this imagination of the will of the people. And this is the idea of the real democracy. Now, basically, what the government says, that they want to actually have government. They want to have a real democracy. The Supreme Court is not a representation of the will of the people. They have the majority, therefore they can pass any law they want, and there should no any check and balance from the Supreme Court. And it comes, what is the real democracy? So this here is where it comes, the idea of of conservatism in the big C versus liberalism, emphasis on religion, on tradition. So all these things are basically, when, as opposed to democracy that also keep the rights of minorities, no, this is not what we need. We need the real desire of the nation, of the people. And this is again a regular recipe for populists. And then there is also a fight against the elites. So there's a real people versus elites who represent the prior regime. And we will see in a second, has to do with academia, with science, with ideology that reflects science. So we don't want the elites to govern anymore. We don't want, and there is this idea that they represent the real people who don't have the chance to become professors in the university, who do not have the chance to go to the elite units in the army, based on nothing. But basically, they have the story that they will represent the people in the periphery. They will take care of them, even though, as I will say in a second, those people did nothing to the people from the periphery. They did nothing to the lower class of Israel. In fact, they are against helping them. So we will see, this is part of the big picture. And I just want to give you a quote from, again, just to give you a sense. Last Thursday, there was a rally of the government for the government. And this is what the Justice Minister, Yariv Levin, who is behind this judicial revolution, he said, I believe that it is possible to agree that the time has come for the court that will not grant rights to the families of terrorists, that will not allow the holding of fake memorial ceremonies together with supporters of terrorism. What's the story? There was this demonstration of people who died, of victims of terrorism from both sides, Palestinian and Jews, and the Supreme Court allowed it to happen. So all the Arabs, even people who are for peace, are actually terrorists. Join us so that we will have a court that tries rape and does not make it easy for them. What are the rapes? Why they care about rapes? There was one case of an Arab who raped someone, and basically he was treated in the same way that anyone else was treated. That protects the elderly in South Tel Aviv and not the infiltrators, refugees who harm them, and protests. So basically, this is again against refugees who came to Israel based on UN agreements. This is how exactly, and this is how he justifies now the change in the legal system. This is the classical language of a populist government. You can translate to Hungarian, it will sound perfect. You can translate to English with a certain accent, it will sound perfect, because this is a recipe of populist government. So now, what we are worried about, what might be next? Basically, Israel passed a law of the National Basic Law, which basically has a very simple idea. This is the nation of the Jews. It has the idea that until 3 years ago, 4 years ago, Israel has 3 languages, national languages, Hebrew, English, and Arabic. Now only Hebrew. The idea was very simple. The people who stand behind this law actually wrote it explicitly to make it clear that there are 2 types of citizens. One is superior and one is inferior. Superior, the Jews who speak Hebrew. The inferior are the Arabs. Now, when we applied, and I was part of a group that appealed to the Supreme Court to annul this law, the Supreme Court said, well, it's not so nice, but it's not an operative law. Today, in the government, there was a discussion to make sure that this will be a law that will guide all governments' decisions. If this is the case, starting from next year, there can be discrimination about who can live in which cities in Israel. That's part of actually what this law says. If you understand it in a certain way, next year, this will be legitimate. It will be legitimate to give more money to Jewish education than to other education in Israel. So these are things that can become actually imperative if those changes happen. Academia. This is the sign of our demonstration, no academia without democracy. I want to again give you a sentence from our justice minister on March 3rd on TV in front of the entire nation. He said the following: if we succeed in changing judicial system, we will also change the academy. There's a very clear idea here that they have to fix the academy. The academy is too liberal. The academy is too free. It has to. And next day, what we will see is the limitation in budgets for research. They actually said it explicitly. They want to annul tenure for faculty in the universities. All those things are not like imagination that we have. They actually say it quite explicit, quite clear. Media at 8 o'clock when everyone can hear that. Citizenship laws to make sure that only pure Jews can become citizens of Israel, not allowing any Arab family to unite. This is something that is actually going to be there. More power to religious court. This is why you saw this picture of the Handmaid's Tale, because this is what they want to do, to actually give more power to religious court, that they will have the full power on the marital laws. So these are things that we're not imagining. These are things that can happen in the coming year, and they're actually working on it. Discrimination against LGBTQ. Basically, there was a whole debate about when someone gives donate blood, whether on the form there will be father and mother, or whether it will be two parents, and it's going to be a law that only father and mother can be on forms, and many other things. Who can adopt kids? At the moment, there is an open discussion, an open case in the Supreme Court, and they want to make it a law that only family who have a father and a mother can adopt kids. And the real thing is that they actually don't care about the peripheries, don't care about lower class in Israel. In fact, they are against social assistance. They're against any help to people who are poor. So this is actually part of, because they adopt a conservative approach theories from the US as is, and this is what we inherit from them. So this is the concern, this is the worry, these are the real thing, and they're all connected to the populist agenda. And you can imagine how to continue. But I want to say actually that on the other hand, the fight back actually creates new coalitions. And I want to actually to say something about it, and maybe something about activities that I was involved in. So I do want to end with hope. And the idea, what I want to emphasize is that basically the way we see it, and this is a summary, that it's not intended, what the government is now doing is not intended to improve the situation and the status of the citizen and the residents of Israel. They just want to narrowing of the democratic space and the expansion of violence and oppression, and it will increase social inequality, will silence the educational and the critical discourse, and will harm the possibility of fighting injustice on the part of the government. And back in 2018, I was part of the Mizrahi Civic Collective that we basically appealed against the Supreme Court, against the National Basic Law. And we want to clarify something. We support now the Supreme Court not because we agree with its past decisions. An independent Supreme Court is only a necessary condition for a moral country, but not a sufficient one. As a matter of fact, our Supreme Court was the one who actually allowed the occupation. And we have to end the occupation. So this is part of our desire here, is to keep the option, to keep the possibility that one day our country will become a justice country. At the moment we are not. At the moment we gave up because of pragmatic reason. But when we fight for the Supreme Court, it's not because we agree with the Supreme Court. It's because this is the only way that it will be an option to heal our country. Also, we need to annul the national basic law. This is something that should disappear from our legal system. At the moment, we have a racist law that basically declares that Israel has two types, two levels, of citizenship. We need to fight against inequality before the law. And this is part of the fact that in Israel, there was inequality in Israel. People in different areas of Israel were treated differently. We have to fight against discrimination against Arabs and against Jews from different areas of the world. There was an injustice in Israel. Sephardic Jews were not treated in the same way as Ashkenazic one. People from the East, Yemen, and the Balkans were not treated in a justice way. And part of what we want to do now is to heal, is to correct, is to have a better future for Israel. And in general, when we speak about the history of the Jews, often it's a very narrow history. And there is a need to fight for Sephardic struggle for recognition. This is part of the healing process that we need to actually hope to have a clear vision of what we're looking for. And basically, this is a time to actually write a constitution for Israel. And I think more and more we see now an attempt to go back to the Declaration of Independence. It's not the ideal text, but it's going in the right direction for a moral country, for a justice country. At least this is the goals of this country. So going back, I think to summarize, something is happening now. Our fear from populist governments were real, and now we have a government that has no internal opposition to this movement. And we see that they're aiming to change. They have actually a plan how to actually make this populist agenda real. But at the same time, we have to fight to stop it. But if we will succeed in stopping it, we have to write our constitution or our dreams for what will be next and how to heal. This is it. I'm done.
So thank you so much to all the presenters. It's